Hello guys and welcome to my new video. And today Blizzard has announced more healer changes that will be happening for patch 11.07. We'll go through all the healer changes that have been announced. We'll talk about Mythic Plus, we'll talk about raiding, and we'll see how the healer balance is changing. And now let's move on to Holy Paladin changes. I can actually hear my cat in the back being quite naughty. You can see it here. I see you. But there is a lot of things to read here for Holy Paladin, but the summary of these changes is that they're not all that impactful. So keep that in mind. Again, we're going to go through all the changes here. Veneration now transfers 225% of damage done into healing. Used to be 200%. Now, Veneration usage is going to depend on your playstyle, the type of content you're doing. So the mileage of this change is going to highly depend on whether you're actually running Veneration or not. Saved by the Light, absorb amount increased by 15%. Now, Saved by the Light is used by a lot of Holy Paladins. This is again, a marginal HPS increase, but again, buffs are buffs to some extent. The biggest change here most likely is going to be Consecrate. Damage is increased by 30%. Now, a lot of Holy Paladins who are running Mythic Plus are going to really look at this and they're like, okay, this is not all that bad. So the overall summary, again, I don't really want to cover the last change because it's more to do with PvP than anything else, but overall, these changes here for Holy Paladin, extremely conservative. The damage buff, again, is not... Again, a bit of a DPS increase, a bit of a HPS increase, nothing too major. It's not really going to change the meta in Mythic Plus or rating, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. But before I finish off this Holy Paladin section, I really want to know your opinion right now, because everywhere I go, I read feedback based on healers, and I read a lot of feedback based on Holy Paladins right now, because the community is extremely divided in terms of, hey, a lot of people might really like that Lightsmith AC Avenging Crusader build, or a lot of people might consider this to be the worst iteration of Holy Paladin yet. In which camp do you stand? How do you feel about the Avenging Crusader gameplay that is meta right now in a lot of forms of content? I'm not saying other builds are not viable, but Lightsmith AC is definitely something that is picked up a lot of popularity. How do you feel about that gameplay? Do you think it's the good way forward, especially when it comes to Season 2, or would you like something else for Paladin in the future? And the next healer is going to be Holy Priest. Another week of Holy Priest buffs. Again, I think they're extremely worthy of these buffs, especially when it comes to that Mythic Plus content, because I'll be honest with you, Holy Priest, again, let's look through the changes. Flash healing increased by 15% and Holy Fire damage increased by 15%. I'm sure a lot of Holy Priests who are reading these changes, they're kind of like scratching their head and like, this is not really the issue of Holy Priests right now. A lot of people who are playing Holy Priests are questioning the design choices when it comes to Holy Priest, because right now Holy Priest is in that spot healing niche, which again, there's nothing wrong about this. You're running Lightweaver both in Raid and Mythic Plus. Again, as I mentioned before, there's nothing wrong about having a spot healing niche, because for example, if you're building a Raid composition of healers, there's a lot of healers out there who provide a lot of AoE healing, but they don't have a strong single target. And Holy Priest can complement that group, and I think it's part of the fun. But overall, a lot of people are questioning, for example, the value of Prayer of Healing. You don't pick Prayer of Healing both in Raids or Mythic Plus. Is this niche sustainable? For example, as a Holy Priest in Mythic Plus content, there is a bunch of AoE healing checks. And playing as a Holy Priest in these higher Mythic Plus keys can actually be extremely daunting when you feel like you don't have a full toolkit. So how do I feel about these changes? Again, buffs are buffs. They're not really going to address some of the underlying issues of Holy Priest or playing Holy Priest right now, especially in that Mythic Plus content. But I just really want to know your opinion. Do you enjoy the Holy Priest niche right now? Do you enjoy that spot healing? Do you enjoy Lightweaver type of gameplay? And what changes would you like to see in the future? Would you like to see a rework happening to Priest or Holy Priest specifically in Season 2? Let me know. And now let's move on to the last change here, and that's going to be for Resto Shaman. There are buffs to Totemic. Totemic Surging Totem mana cost is reduced by 25%. Now, if you've been playing Resto Shaman, especially if you've been doing higher keys or doing keys where a lot of people are taking unavoidable or taking avoidable damage and you just end up spamming your heals, you're probably fully aware of the fact that Resto Shaman or Totemic Resto Shaman can have substantial mana issues to an extent where you will be looking for every opportunity, for example in Mythic Plus, to have that mana drink, to make sure to top up your mana, because you know the next pull is going to be extremely intensive. So you're probably fully aware of this. Resto Shaman Totemic has had mana issues for a long time in the War Within, and I felt like this change right here should have been implemented way earlier, because I've been playing, for example, a lot of my Mythic Plus time has been spent playing Mistweaver Monk, playing Discipline Priest right now, because I want to experiment, I want to see how fun these healers are, and honestly, the difference in mana management is absolutely night and day. As a Resto Shaman Totemic, if you, again, I talked about this, if you're doing higher keys, if you're doing keys where people are taking a lot of unnecessary damage, you end up spamming a lot of your heals, you have to drink. I'm playing Discipline Priest right now, and I don't think I had to drink a single time when it comes to that Mythic Plus content. Not a single time out of all the keys that I've done so far. Most of the time as a Discipline Priest, you're staying above 90% mana. It is absolutely wild. You might as well delete mana bar when playing Discipline Priest in that Mythic Plus content. I've also been playing Mistweaver Monk, and Mistweaver Monk is in a similar boat. Now, you will be using up your mana depending if you have a large or annoying trash ball or the boss fight is taking a long time, but you have Mana Tea. Mana Tea is absolutely OP, and it makes mana irrelevant. And again, there's other healers who have very little mana issues, but I'm playing these right now. I wanted to highlight these because when I play my Restoration Shaman Totemic, I can definitely feel like it's one of those healers that has arguably one of the biggest mana issues. And I think these changes right here for Totemic Surging Totem is really nice, because Surging Totem as a Resto Shaman, you're going to be using this as much as possible, both in raids and Mythic Plus content, and having less mana or totem costing less mana is going to be a decent amount of mana gain. So that might mean you'll be able to play more offensively when it comes to that Mythic Plus or raids, or you'll have more mana to spend in different ways, which again, a win-win situation, something that should have happened a long time ago. Of course, as Resto Shaman, you have an option of going Farseer, and that's going to have a lot less mana issues. In the last couple of weeks, Farseer received a lot of DPS increases, but for me, I'm still waiting for more Farseer buffs to do with HPS. The effort of playing Farseer might not always provide you with an appropriate reward when you compare it to something like Totemic. Farseer, in my eyes, is more involved, more difficult to play than Totemic. Don't get me wrong, Farseer is absolutely viable. You can go and try it out, especially if you're getting bored of Totemic, but I just feel like Farseer should provide you with a little bit more because of the amount of effort it requires. And I don't think that's too much to ask, especially considering that, again, the majority of Resto Shamans in all forms of content are still picking Totemic, and I think Blizzard would like to bring down or even out those numbers, because I think Blizzard wants a lot of the hero builds out there to be used or have a better representation. And now let's look at raid HPS performance for all the healers, and what do these changes mean? How are these bars are going to change? We're looking at narrow bar palace in terms of mythic. We're looking at 80 percentile. If we look at 95 percentile, the changes or the bars are going to change a little bit. Again, I think looking at HPS this late in the patch, this late in the season, is a little bit misleading, but let's go and look through them. So there are HPS increases to Holy Paladin. I don't think they're all that substantial, but Holy Paladin is probably going to climb a little bit. Resto Shaman is going to have more mana to play around because Surging Totem mana cost has been reduced, which means that maybe you'll be able to play more offensively, and that is true for both raid and Mythic Plus content, because most of the Resto Shamans right now are playing Totemic. Again, if you're sick of Totemic, go and try out Farseer for something a little bit different. But overall, Resto Shaman might, again, it might gain a little bit because you have more mana to play around, which is only a good thing. And Holy Priest is going to have a little bit of an increase because there has been HPS changes to Flash Shield. There's been changes to Holy Fire damage, but that's not going to be shown here because this is mainly HPS, raid, again, performance. So overall, is there going to be something substantial? Not really. There's only a few minor increases here. The HPS isn't going to fluctuate in a manner that's going to impact the meta, both in raids or Mythic Plus, because again, as I mentioned, Blizzard is very conservative in terms of what is happening right now. Let's go and look at Mythic Plus. In terms of Mythic Plus, you probably have seen this chart a lot because this is real play information, looking at the top keys in terms of spec representation when it comes to DPS, tanks, and healers. And again, the healer changes right now are not going to change anything. You'll still see Discipline Priest being extremely dominant. Again, Discipline Priest domination is also to do with the fact that Prot Paladin is doing really well, and Blizzard is very reluctant about making any tank changes. Again, we'll have to see in the future if Blizzard is going to try and look at tanks overall, because if tank balance is going to be better, I can guarantee you healer balance will also be better because of how intertwined Prot Paladin and Discipline Priest are right now. In terms of other changes, we saw Resto Shaman Surging Totem changes in terms of mana reduction, or it's going to cost less mana, means you're going to have more mana to play around, which is going to be a big win for a lot of Totemic Resto Shamans out there, because it is arguably one of the healers that have the most mana issues, especially if you're doing content or high keys or content where people are taking a lot of unnecessary damage. Outside of that, we saw buffs to Holy Paladin. Again, the buffs, when I say buffs, it's being very generous. The changes are very minimal. They're not going to impact a whole lot. You're going to do a little bit more damage, a little bit more healing, nothing too crazy. And outside of that, we saw more changes to Holy Priest, and I think Holy Priest changes. I think most of the people out there are asking probably for Holy Priest rework right now, for more, or to increase their toolkit in terms of more buttons to press when it comes to AoE healing. What is happening with Prayer of Healing? Is that going to be a dead button for another season? Is that going to be something that people are not going to be picking? Do Holy Priests want to go back to that Prayer of Healing, or want it to be more impactful? I think this is a big topic for discussion in terms of Holy Priest, in terms of the gameplay, in terms of what it provides right now, in terms of spot healing. Is that fun, interesting, or should be changed? Let me know. And before I finish up, just a very quick look at healer damage, because 2 of the healing specs got buffed in terms of damage that they provide. This is real play information. This is looking at Mythic Plus, and you can see here Holy Paladin damage has been increased. They're going to be doing a bit more DPS, and Holy Priest damage has been increased in terms of Holy Fire doing more damage. And this kind of begs the question in terms of looking at other healers as well. For example, Restoration Shaman, there was a knee-jerk reaction or nerf to Acid Rain a while back because Resto Shaman was meta and Blizzard was kind of panicking, and you're looking at Resto Shaman DPS right now and it's not really all that amazing, especially considering the fact that the Acid Rain bug still exists for Necrotic Wake and Dawnbreaker platforms. It's still there, man. It's kind of crazy to think about it. And then you look at Resto Druid, and I actually think Resto Druid's damage can be really good if you're allowed to DPS. And we both know that this is not always going to be the case, especially when you're doing poke content where you have to focus. You're looking at Resto Druid and you have to remember how intensive it is in terms of to provide good amount of healing. So I think there definitely needs to be further iterations on healer DPS. I don't want to harp on too much about this because I know a lot of people don't really care about healer damage and things like that, but I think a good balance between healers, the amount of healing they can do and the amount of damage they can do, is good for the game. Let me know how you feel about this. So to summarize the video, there's been few changes for healers in terms of buffs, but a lot of them are relatively minor. They're not going to alter the meta all that much. Blizzard is somewhat reluctant about making some big changes outside of healers also in terms of tank changes or tank meta. Again, let me know about that. I think the meta for 11.07 is looking somewhat stale. I think a lot of people are looking for more changes, different comps emerging. Again, if Blizzard is going to change up the meta, there's going to be more kind of incentive for our players to level new characters, level new alts, try them out and all those things. Again, let me know how you feel about this. Nothing too crazy, nothing too amazing, some quality of life improvements, which again are welcome, but 11.07 is still looking to be somewhat stale in my opinion. What changes would you like to see in the future or possibly in Season 2? And which healer are you looking to main in Season 2?